Cue the crash outs. The Fever lost, and there's a clear case to blame head coach Stephanie White. So you know that is coming. Look, the Fever fought their way back into the game late against the Dallas Wings, who are not a good basketball team. The Wings should, be ashamed of themselves for even letting the Fever sniff a chance at victory in this one the way it went. But you also have to remember the circumstances the Fever are playing under. We need context here. It's why I praised them after the Chicago Sky game. They have no point guard. Their best player is sideline, in Caitlin Clark, of course. Her replacement is out for the season. The only other capable person of playing that position is also out for the season, which is why the Fever turned the ball over so much in this game. They turned the ball over actually more without Clark than with her, despite, her being known for turning it over. And the Wings capitalized by scoring a bunch of points off turnovers in this game, which gets us to the end of the game. Now, before you get there, there was some refereeing issues that I'm sure will come up as well. Some inconsistent officiating, which is par for the course in the WNBA. It's hard to really put a finger on it because you see this reckless closeout called for a flagrant on Sophie Cunningham. There's Paige, catches it. Sophie comes in and does get her foot under there. So I don't even disagree with that call. I just asked for calls to be made consistently. And later in the game, Grace Berger, it was straight on, but she kind of got up under Kelsey Mitchell's airspace in the same way, and they called that a common foul. They said it was toe-to-toe. I mean, I'd have to go read the rule book, but to me, those were similar plays. And then there was this play where Paige Beckers shoves Sophie Cunningham, and Sophie gets called for the foul, which she was none too happy about. As you can see, there was late in the game with Lee Uru and Aaliyah Boston fighting for position, and Uru sort of had Boston's arm locked, not allowing her to move. And the broadcasters, Ryan and Rebecca, were very incredulous about that one. Look, sometimes I see fights for position going either way. You could interpret it as Uru having Boston's arm trapped or Boston having her arm under her. It didn't bother me quite as much, but the inconsistencies bother me across the board. And that's one of the biggest problems with WNBA officiating. And if you're a Fever fan, I can understand why you think that they get the short end of the stick a lot of the times. Every team feels that way. But, sometimes it does, admittedly seem like they get slighted a little bit in the way that the things are called. Maybe it's because they're such a high profile team and we're focused so much on them, but the refs are not good. And that's something that the WNBA has to address and improve. Then there's the end of the game. So everybody gets a chance to blame Stephanie White because the end of it didn't work out. Now, you have this still here. This is when the Fever were down by 1 point to the Wings, 12.6 seconds left. And could have, no timeout. A lot of coaches don't call timeout in this situation. I agree with not calling timeout in this situation. Defense isn't set. You can get going. And you can catch them on their heels versus a set defense. Kind of like you'll see here. So if Natasha Howard, she had the ball, but if she had given it up here, you have Kelsey Mitchell streaking down the court. Another, you got Lexi and Sophie about to run down the floor as well. But that's a play Natasha Howard has to give that up to Kelsey Mitchell going downhill with 10 seconds left on the clock. Kelsey Mitchell does indeed get the ball down the stretch of the game. And this is when Stephanie White hesitated to call the reset timeout. Kelsey gets it here. He sees 8 seconds left on the clock. He gets it. So she gets it. Now she's got two defenders. Maybe here is when you realize this is not going to work out so well. That's probably the mistake Stephanie White makes. Now, in her defense, look, there goes the other defender to Howard. Now, at this point, you got Kelsey one-on-one. So, in Stephanie White's mind, she's probably thinking my best scorer My best playmaker, considering everybody else that's down, has the ball. Let me let her create. And then Kelsey kind of bobbles the ball, gets put in a bad situation, and that's when the reset timeout comes. Obviously, they don't get a good look with 1.7 seconds left. So you can easily argue that should have been called sooner, and that was a mistake on the head coach's part. At the same time, generally you don't get good shots down the end of games. You always hear this every time a basketball game is close. People get mad at the last shot in that last situation, all those things. And generally, you don't get a good shot. And it's also hard when you have no one who knows how to control and command a team. With Caitlin out of the lineup and with Ari out of the lineup and even with Sydney out of the lineup, but especially the first two. Odyssey Sims played 13 minutes. Her first game was bad. I mean, I give her a little grace because she's just got there, but she was bad. So that's not an option for Stephanie White in this game. I know people point to the rotation at the beginning of the fourth. Brianna Turner played 4 minutes. Chloe Bibby played 12 minutes, was minus 15. She shot the crap out the ball, 3 of 3 from 3, but she can't defend at all. Dantas can't shoot or defend. I mean, she can defend on the block, but that's about it. Sophie Cunningham and Kelsey Mitchell did the heavy lifting in this one. Aaliyah Boston's always consistent in that regard. But it's going to be hard. When Ari and Sydney went down, everybody said, oh, that's it, doom and gloom, right? Well, now you have to also apply that logic. It doesn't just go away because you beat the Sky. Now, Caitlin Clark is on her way back. I mean, this is bad because the Wings stink. And the Fever could have won that game and not fallen further in the standings. What did they fall to 6th? They're a half game behind the Aces in the standings now. So that's the real negative. You can point to maybe a rotation error or leaving somebody in for a minute or the lineup being wrong for a split second. But it doesn't undo what has happened up until this point. That's what I'm giving the coach credit for. Managing the team through adversity, winning despite injury, despite Bonner leaving, that having come up in the middle of the season, despite having to bring players in like McDonald and hand them the keys, winning against the Sky without anybody to give the keys to, and keeping the camaraderie and the spirit of the team high throughout the entire season. You've seen their togetherness. It doesn't get erased because maybe she should have called the reset timeout a couple seconds earlier in one game. Like, it doesn't need to be a crash out every single time. That's what drives me crazy. Caitlin Clark is going to be back, y'all. She's going to be back. Caitlin Clark is going to start practicing, I'm assuming, next week. And she will be back, I have a pretty good sense, sometime between the 22nd and the 26th. There are how many more games between now and then? The job was to stay afloat while she was out. You got Washington and Connecticut, Minnesota, Seattle. So at most, she's missing 4 more games, I believe, for a comeback on the 26th. At most. Which lets her play down the stretch to get ready for the playoffs. At best, she's missing 2 more games. Winnable games. Yes, the Wings was a winnable game. But it also doesn't erase the season. And, I don't want to go like this every single time. The Fever are 500 without Caitlin Clark. I think would have signed up for that, knowing she was going to miss this amount of time and knowing everything else they have had to go through.